It's a hormone disruptor and it's in the endocrine system. So what that means is the body looks at it and it mimics estrogen. And so there are estrogen positive cancers. So it can trick the body into thinking that it has more estrogen. That affects both women and men because we all need estrogen. And it also, anyone who's gone through menopause, if you're a woman and you start to your estrogen starts to lower, they call it like a brain fog. So it has a direct correlation to our brain.
Hello and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist, Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist Podcast has the goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. Are there hidden chemicals lurking in our underwear? If you listened to the 10-part Forever Chemicals podcast series that we released earlier in 2024, then you'll know that dangerous chemicals like PFAS can make their way into our clothing, and that includes our underwear. The issue with this is that chemicals like PFAS or even BPAs are known endocrine disruptors, and that means they impact our hormones. So if you're an active individual, those chemicals can be absorbed into some of the most delicate parts of our bodies. To help explain how these chemicals actually end up in our underwear in the first place and how we can avoid them, I'm excited to share a conversation that I had with Deanne Buck, the current president of BRANWYN. Deanne is one of the driving forces behind the brand BRANWYN, based in Bend, Oregon. She's passionate about the world's first ethically sourced, naturally sustainable performance innerwear, designed specifically for active women. Deanne's commitment to storytelling and community empowerment is reflected in BRANWYN's ethos, Find a Way, which inspires women to embrace their unique needs through thoughtfully designed apparel. With a focus on sustainability and social impact, BRANWYN not only revolutionizes women's innerwear, but also champions the development of self-confidence in girls and women through outdoor activities and movement. So thank you for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast today. I am excited to, explore another avenue of chemistry that we haven't on the show before, and also introduce a brand that I personally love and use in my daily life. So to start, I'll start with my standard interview question, since we are an outdoor-focused podcast and most of our listeners are recreationalists. So do you yourself participate in outdoor sports? And if so, how did you become interested in them? And which ones do you prefer in your daily life now?
What a great question. I was thinking about this because I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and so I knew this was coming. And I would say I grew up in Grand Island, Nebraska, which I don't think anyone's ever heard of that. It's a small town right in the center. And in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't something like motorized, non-motorized, public, private. It was just the outdoors. And so I grew up playing outside all the time. But there wasn't anything like a mountain to climb or a trail. And so, funny enough, I ended up in Omaha in my early 20s and met a guy, and he was from Davis, and he was into climbing and rafting, hiking. And so I got into climbing in Omaha at the YMCA. There was this it was called a Woody. It was like in the 1990s, and it was 3 panels with holds tacked to them. And that's how I learned to climb. And then I started soon after we moved to LA. He was doing an ER residency, and I started really exploring the outdoors. So I became a river raft guide, and I started working at a climbing gym. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm not making any money. I should probably figure out what's next in my life. And so I applied to law school and I got into Davis and Boulder. And by this point, I was kind of making most of my decisions on how close I was to a climbing area. And Yosemite was like 4 hours from Davis, I think 4 or 5. And Flagstaff was 5 minutes from the law school at CU Boulder. So CU Boulder it was. Um, and that started my career really in the outdoor industry. So not only being an outdoor enthusiast, I've had my entire career working in climbing, conservation, equity, inclusion, women's leadership. And now I still love to trail run. I cross country ski. When I can, I climb. I feel like as I'm getting older, things are breaking more often. But really, it's just time outside. And I moved to Bend 2 years ago, and so I've started river dipping. Um, like just go down to the river when it's really cold and get in. It's the weirdest thing ever. And paddle boarding and all of that. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I really was hyper focused on rock climbing through all my 20s. And now, as I'm in my early 30s, I've noticed myself kind of like shift away from that and get more injuries and things like that. Just as you age, I think your interests do kind of like shift and change. But
I
I
also
love,
think too, like as women, I don't know if you've had this experience, but climbing is so partner dependent. And so a lot of my climbers friends, we went through life cycles. And so it was also like time bound sometimes on who I could climb with.
yeah, that is a really good point. Now that I think about it, a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of my climbing partners that like we kind of just were dirt bagged it up for a lot of my life. Now
Mhm.
they kind of like started families or they moved away or they're just kind of pursuing other things. So that is a really good point. Um, and now, as you continue your work in the outdoor industry, you're the president of BRANWYN. So, what drew you to them as a company? And also, for listeners that don't know, do you mind explaining what exactly they are?
Absolutely. So I'll start with what BRANWYN is. We create performance innerwear. Right now, we have 5 products for the most part, 2 bras and 3 pairs of underwear. It is a very unique construction. It's unique to the outdoor industry in that we take wool, mostly wool, and then instead of doing cut and sew, which everyone knows, for typical wool, we actually use a seamless machine. So it's constructed the way that we think of most sportswear, or a lot of underwear that is seamless. It's all nylon. And so it's kind of a new category. It's called performance innerwear, and it's great for everything from hiking to yoga to just hanging out around the house. And most women come into it through an activity. They'll get it for travel or for hiking, and then all of a sudden they become aware of the benefits of wool, and then it's super comfortable, and then all of a sudden everything else is getting thrown out the door. I came to the brand through one of the co-founders, Jeff and Lauren Schaefer. So the brand began in like the 2014 by this woman, Shauna, who started it as Stay Golden. And the story is on our blog. And then she created 3 products and was raising a family and she started the products and created the products because she was in nursing training and found out that she's like, why are all these women coming in with UTIs and infections? And the her mentor said it's because they're wearing nylon underwear and it's like a petri dish. And so she started looking for an alternative, a natural alternative. And cotton is there, but if you're active, cotton doesn't really work. And so she embraced on and started this seamless merino wool collection, and then realized that she didn't have the time and energy. And Jeff and Lauren come from the apparel industry. And so it was a really beautiful, heartfelt, heart-centered transition. They took it over and renamed it to BRANWYN, and that's been in existence since about early 2020. I met Jeff when I was in Bend. I moved to Bend 2 years ago, and it was just one of those conversations where you realize that for me, it was kind of a dream come true. It took everything about my past, all of my experiences, and also a lot of new challenges, and was like, here's this opportunity. So it was conservation based, it was sustainability based, it was focused on women, it was the outdoors. And what I didn't have was the product side. And so Jeff and Lauren have really invested in helping me get up to speed very quickly on the entire product side of BRANWYN.
That's amazing. Yeah, BRANWYN, I am trying to think of when I first started using that brand, and I feel like it's only been a couple of years. But now I will say that I did follow the trajectory that you outlined. It's like once I had tried them and I used them for backpacking and travel and all these different things, I was like, okay, when I wear my other underwear, it's just not quite as comfortable and I don't like it as well, especially for long distances or like extended travel. So
Mhm.
like then you can bring just like two pairs of underwear and wash them on the trail and all those things. So I am probably talking too much about how much I love them,
No,
but I
keep
don't
talking, keep
I
talking.
don't like to bring brands on the show that I don't like fully believe in. And so like the fact that I use them in my daily life and pretty much only use them as my innerwear, I think is like a great sign of how well they work, especially because I work in product journalism. So like I write about products all the time and try all these different ones. And I haven't tried an underwear really that works as well as your guys's yet. So,
That's wonderful.
um,
And I would say, I mean, one of the things that's so like beautiful about this brand is it's close to body. And we have over 4,000 5-star reviews, but it's the level of detail that women go into when they're talking about their experience with the product. It like every day, if I'm ever like, oh, what am I doing? Or does this have meaning? All I have to do is look at some of those um, and I don't think it's just because I work for the company, but life changing comes up a lot.
yeah, it is something that I didn't like actively think about the underwear that I was wearing very often
Mm-hmm.
until I was assigned a story about underwear. And then I was like, okay, wait, this actually does kind of influence my experience, especially when I'm like sweating and outdoors and dirty and all these things. And so when we are kind of thinking about the aspects that set BRANWYN apart, you mentioned like the primary one is the material and that they're seamless, but are there like other specific things that you think make them, as some women are saying, life changing?
Well, I do think that the wool found merino foundation, and it's not just merino, it's ZQ. So there are different standards, and we are committed to always bringing in the highest standard of fiber. And if there's any developments in sustainability, we're always keeping our eye on that. And so it's called ZQ, which is sourced from both Australia and New Zealand. We just had a conversation with them like 2 days ago. And I said, does it really matter that the sheep are happy and healthy and it's ethical? And she said, actually, it does. She said, think about when we're stressed and what happens to our hair. And that's the exact same thing that's happening to the sheep. And so ZQ has a standard for both the workers and the animals and biodiversity. So that's just like foundational for us and our brand. And then we use the most minimal amount of nylon and spandex because we need that for performance, for like the elasticity, but also the durability. And so we've tested, and we're also looking at how do we stay on top of new developments with those fibers, because those are probably the most kind of problematic fibers that we use. And so I think the moment that we feel like we can get some alternatives that have the same performance level or the performance level necessary to deliver what we need, we're already in testing phases for those. So that's like the foundation of it. And then kind of what comes with that, which I don't think it was on a lot of people's radars until I think it was like a 2022 report by CEH where they talked about BPA and PFAS in sportswear, particularly in bras. And so what we know is what we don't have, and we don't have those. And for us, we knew that from our factories. We knew it from the thread, from the fabric we were getting. All of those entities are certified, and we partner with them because of their rigorous certifications and testing and commitment to sustainability. And then we went one step further and did testing ourselves to make sure that our finished products too were free of the BPAs and the PFAS and forever chemicals.
Yeah, was there something specific that drew your team to like analyze the chemicals that were being put into these products, or why was that such an important focus for your team?
Well, we had been writing about it. One of the really beautiful aspects of BRANWYN is we have 5 products and they never change. And so if you're a clothing company, you're always coming out with like new colors and new fashion. And we're like, well, what story do we tell? And so we have an entire blog with a professional writer and editor, and that's all she does is research for us to make sure that we're staying on top of trends, that we're educating our consumers, that we're able community, I would say, not consumers, our community, and that we're able to be transparent and honest about, what we're seeing and um how we're maintaining our commitments to the health of both the planet and the women. And so I think even on one of your podcasts in the past where you were talking about PFAS, and at some point someone's like, yeah, you could bring a piece of paper in, like a packing slip in, and it contaminates the product. And so we wanted to make sure that while we were testing on the fabric side, we were testing at the factory, um, that there wasn't any contamination at any point, and that some fabrics, some companies will like dust their clothing in formaldehyde when they're done to protect it while shipping. And so, we knew our factories weren't doing that. And, like we were like, okay, we have a commitment to our consumer. We need to make sure that when we're handing it to them, we know exactly what we're handing to them.
Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother-daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax, hemp, and tencel, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code OutdoorMinimalist for 15% off your next order. Listeners know that PFAS is a big topic that we cover on this show and then our other production, Forever Chemicals. But today, I want to focus as much as possible on BPA because that is something that is in a lot of products. There has been a lot of discourse in the last decade or so about removing it, and the EPA has some bans, etc. But I'm interested to learn about like how that enters textiles. Like, why is that bad if it is in our underwear? So do you mind just overviewing, I guess, what BPA is, and then also what dangers it poses?
Sure. So just a disclaimer. I already told Meg I'm not a scientist or a chemist. And so the BPA is part of a class of it's BPs. There's BPS, there's BPA. And so BPA has gotten the most, I would say, the most attention. And I remember, I don't even know how long ago it was, probably 15 years ago when Nalgene like came out and it was BPA, and all of a sudden there was a brand called, I think, Swiss or something, and they weren't BPA. And so there was this awareness. It was almost like an earthquake awareness moment of the fact that BPA in our water bottles is entering the water stream that's going into our bodies, and that's not good. And so today you would be hard to find a water bottle that has BPA in it. BPA is what makes plastic hard. And so it goes in, and what it is it's an endocrine disruptor. So what that means, or it's a hormone disruptor, and it's in the endocrine system. So what that means is the body looks at it and it mimics estrogen. And so there are estrogen positive cancers. So it can trick the body into thinking that it has more estrogen. That affects both women and men, because we all need estrogen. And it also, anyone who's gone through menopause, if you're a woman and you start to, your estrogen starts to lower, they call it like a brain fog. So it has a direct correlation to our brain. And the research that I've done, indicates that while BPA is not good for us, there are very critical times in our lives when it's actually worse. And those are the times where, we're in utero, if a mom is breastfeeding, when we're going through puberty, and then for women, when we're going through menopause, because we are, we're losing our natural estrogen. And there are a lot of cancers that we're seeing later in life that are affected by estrogen and estrogen positive. So it's and then there's that has like an entire ramification for us as far as our immune systems, and how we're staying healthy. It's disruptive to us on pretty much every level of our being. And so it gets into our products because some companies add it to polyester for its attributes, which, hold on one second, I added this. Oh, it increases durability and prevents static. Who cares about static? But it increases the durability. What's really interesting is the move towards recycled polyester, which is recycled plastic. That is basically taking BPA and recirculating it into our ecosystem. And as it breaks down, it attaches to other disruptors, hormone disruptors, so it can become almost like supercharged in how it breaks down, because it has to break down at some point. So it becomes microplastics and then stays in the system. And so I think there's like this vast understanding of how it is with water bottles. It's in the lining of canned food. Certain things can make it come out like acidic, like a tomato soup will bring out more of the BPA. If you have it, like most of our food is wrapped in it. And so if we put that in the microwave, that like expedites the amount of BPA that's in our food and in our system. And then there's a really big focus on cosmetics. But what isn't talked about is next to skin. And for women, we have next to skin in two very important areas, very important hormone centers. And so a lot of our sports bras are made out of BPA, and we're sweating, we're heating up, our skin is absorbing. And so it's like going directly into our bloodstream in the critical areas where we're, producing estrogen, and, where we have these our memory glands. And when I've talked to people, a lot of times they'll say, I thought about it in my water bottle, but I didn't think about it in my clothing. And that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, we're not necessarily thinking about the fact that there could be hazardous chemicals in the things that we're wearing. And we also maybe aren't considering the potential for a dermal transfer of those chemicals, like being absorbed into our bodies, like perhaps for makeup, sunscreen, those things that we're putting, like rubbing into our skin, but
Mhm.
like things that are against our skin, we may not be considering quite as much. But I think we maybe saw a little bit more awareness of that over the last couple years, especially once the Thinx brand of period underwear kind of came out
Mhm.
with the PFAS in their products that I think was a contamination issue. It wasn't like they were putting it in there on purpose. So you can still buy
Mhm.
Thinx, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to like diss them. They're a great brand. But so when we are considering the like underwear specifically, but I know that is also a concern for like things like leggings because they'll put more chemicals in the crotch area for like I know like Lululemon is um, a big proponent of that,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So be aware of
Mhm.
that if you buy
Mhm.
those. But yeah, like as consumers, how can we then kind of refocus and understand not only the dangers that those pose, but then how to align with products that are posing hopefully less of a risk?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm sure you do too, like, I have clothes. I've been in the outdoor industry for a long time, and, I don't wanna go and just throw everything away, um, and so I do think it starts with, like, our innerwear, our underwear, because that is next to skin, and I often think I've researched, like, how to become a more organic eater, and it's expensive, and so some of the advice is, like, pick the places where it really matters and focus on that first, and so I think as we're looking at how do we start to incorporate more natural fibers and less toxic material into our wardrobe to really think about what are those foundational pieces that are next to skin and start with that and then begin to work our way out. And for me, like the bra and underwear are like first. Um, and so, and also those are the places where we sweat a lot.
If you've enjoyed listening to this interview and any of our other interviews on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we'd love to hear from you. One super easy and free way to support our content is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We thank you for listening to and supporting our work so that together we can create a better outdoor space as we recreate. Clothing in general, especially if we're trying to align with like a more ethical or sustainable production, is going to have a higher price point. And
Mhm.
so I think for some people, they can have a little bit of a sticker shock, especially if they're coming from more of like a fast fashion background, like purchasing from fast fashion brands. And so, like, if you don't have a lot of disposable income to spend on clothing, then, like you said, identifying where is it going to have the biggest impact if this does contain PFAS or if this does contain BPA or like where am I like posing the biggest risk in my life, I
Mhm.
guess. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of what I'm understanding from what you said. And so I'm really glad that as an innerwear brand, BRANWYN focused on those things and are working to ensure that they're PFAS and BPA free. But as I learned in the production of forever chemicals, that's not always easy or even possible. So I am curious as a brand, like how did that process look? And how do you ensure that your products remain free of those harmful chemicals?
That's a great question, and again, like, I think in a couple of your, episodes on the PFAS, having trustworthy partners is really important because we can't control every piece of the movement of our product, and so we took time and then really invested in those partners who we know this is a priority for them as well, and they do rigorous testing every year. So, our factory as well as our yarn supplier, as well as our ZQ, our growers, are all committed to maintaining the highest standards of certification, whether it's Okatech. Is it Okatech or Ecotech?
I do not know how to pronounce it, but it's like the O-E, yeah.
Well, I had a conversation. I was like, is it Okatech or Ecotech? So making sure that everyone has that 100 certification, which is for infants, next to skin infants. So it's the highest and best certification that you can have. And then going above and beyond and bringing in a third party to validate and test. And so that's what we did with Intertech. So we are in the process of annually just sending them our products, having them tested to make sure that we're maintaining the standards that we expect from our factories and from our partners, and that our community expects from us.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier your blog is filled with a ton of different resources. And so the transparency that you guys have, I think, is really important for me, especially as a consumer, because that's something that I am specifically looking for. I'm just like, okay, how much do they know about these things? How much are they telling me about these things? And so it kind of helps build that brand trust for me anyway. So when you introduce new initiatives or even new products, I'm more likely to believe you, basically.
Mhm. Well, and I think for us, we also have, like, we always are doing an evaluation on where we aren't meeting our standard, or where we do have room for improvement, or where maybe the getting the Intertech certification was something where we were like, let's just make sure. Like, let's just make sure. And and so if someone comes to us and says, can you cert? And after we did that, we had people in our community being like, you tested for this, but did you test for this? And we go, no, we didn't. So next time we need to make sure we're testing for that. And so our community is also holding us accountable, which we love and appreciate. They're very educated, and it's important to them. So, but it just makes for a really great partnership with our community and our partners.
Yeah, I have noticed that as a theme in talking to different brands, well, mostly in the outdoor industry, is like the more ethical they are, the more likely they are to like respond to consumer pressure. And like,
Mhm.
if you reach out to them, then you'll get a response and there will potentially be new initiatives that come from that. So, like, if you do have questions, I think that's great that you have that community and that platform for people to be able to ask those questions and use their voices. So, what other initiatives or like sustainability focuses does Brandwyn have coming up in 2024 or 2025?
Sure. So, one thing that we do is, it seems like it's tiny, but we invest in biodegradable and compostable packaging. Um, and so we like to say that our factory would ship everything in plastic at no cost, and our in our warehouse would ship everything in plastic at no cost. And we invest in and research highly compostable and biodegradable packaging. Our hang tags are made out of seeds. So we really try to think holistically about our impact, and we don't pass that cost on to our consumer. That's our commitment to ourselves and to our planet. We just went to the Functional Fabric Fair in Portland a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And so we are also just trying to stay up and figure out who's doing what when it comes to bio-based spandex and recyclable or recycled, or there's some nylon um, additive, which makes it biodegradable. So we're always researching things like that. We would love to have 100% biodegradable product. We would love to have it by the end of the year, with the testing and all that goes into it. It'll probably be at least another year and a half, but we have a partner in our factory who is committed as well. And so they're also pushing for us and pushing for our partners to come up with sustainable solutions.
Yeah, I love that. And I believe, I don't know when this is happening, but you are coming out with a racer back bra, sometime this year, maybe in the spring.
Yeah, it's next week.
Oh, wow. Next week at the time of this recording,
Yes,
um,
next week. I actually
which
have
is
one.
in May. So May of
May.
2024, the
Yes.
Racerback bra will be launched. So when you listen to this, it will be available for sale.
Yes. And so that was 3 years in the making, 6 iterations. We used a seamless construction. And then a lot of times the way structure is added to a bra is through the construction and through the fabric. And so really trying to stay true and committed to having the highest percentage of wool um, to meet the needs that we want in a racerback, which is a higher compression encapsulation so that there's not as much movement. We have the ability to put sleeves in, which that'll help with support. And then also just the construction of the racerback will give more support too. Because one of the things that we've heard is that while women love our bras, for some of them, it's just not supportive enough for the activities that they want to do. And so we're trying to, and we will continue to just make a commitment to always listen to feedback from our customers and develop products that meet their needs. So we're super excited to have that launch next week.
Yeah, I am excited to try those out. I do have a smaller bust, so I've always found the BRANWYN, like the current model or the original model of the
Mhm.
bra to be supportive enough, but I could see that if you are like a larger chested individual, where you would need a little bit more support. So I'm interested to see how that design pans out, and I'm excited that you're going to be offering that. And so, if listeners want to check out more about your products and learn more about all of your information, research, data that you have compiled on the website, how can they do that?
Sure. If you go to BRANWYN.com, so it's BRANWYN.com, and then we have pretty front forward it's called In the Wild, and that's our blog. And if there's any questions that people have or research that they want us to do, we love to do deep dives into things that are of interest to our community. So I would say just shoot us a note. We have a very engaged customer service team, which is basically all of us. And so every comment gets answered, gets read, gets responded to. And we've done blogs on craft manufacturing, which is the manufacturing process of our bras. We've done blogs on our dyes, which are non-toxic and vegetable-based. We just did one recently because we keep hearing about it, and you alluded to a little bit, like, why is my underwear so expensive? We reframed it and said, why should you invest in your underwear? But it really walks through the process of the decision points we have, like ZQ versus muslin wool, and seamless versus cut and sew. And so hopefully it helps to give people an idea of what goes into the product, and that it's not oil-based, it's not petroleum-based. There are actually herders, and a lot of our herders in New Zealand are women whose lives and livelihood are sustained on the bras that people are wearing. So it's kind of a really beautiful, just like, this is an opportunity to do a little bit of a deeper dive into something as simple as the bra you're wearing.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.